Hello, True Health Seeker. I have a very exciting announcement. I have spent over a year, I've spent about 14 months collecting all of my information that I use with my clients for ending anxiety, and I created an online program. I'm very excited about it. We just launched it. And for you, for free, I have a webinar where I teach you 2 powerful mind tricks for removing anxiety, ending worry, and controlling fear so it stops controlling you and your life. In my free webinar, you will learn what causes anxiety and how to stop it, the science behind the mind-body connection, overcoming fear of public speaking, getting unstuck, ending that fear of things not working out, ending procrastination and overwhelm, and feeling excited, grounded, and calm instead of fear and worry. I have so much to teach you in my free webinar, and I'm really excited for you to come check it out. Go to freeyouranxiety.com/webinar. That's freeyouranxiety.com/webinar, or look in the show notes of today's podcast and you'll see the link there so you can jump into the webinar and learn all these wonderful, powerful tools that will end your anxiety and create excitement and happiness instead. Go to freeyouranxiety.com/webinar and sign up now, and I look forward to seeing you in the next live webinar. Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 227. Today is going to be an absolutely fantastic episode. You are going to love our guest, who is both a naturopath and a medical doctor. Very, very rare. You're a rare breed of Dr. Carolyn Dean. Most of my listeners have probably heard of you because you're quite famous in the holistic health field. You are the doctor of the future, which is how you sign at the end of each of your newsletters. And that's probably because you have been a pioneer. We were just speaking before we hit record, and you said that since the 90s, you've been educating the masses on the importance of minerals, especially magnesium, which we're going to definitely get into, and how so many illnesses can be reversed or treated naturally using minerals. We want to get into why is it that minerals are so important? Why is it that we're so deplete? What can we do? What are the best sources of minerals? We're going to get into all that. But first, Dr. Carolyn Dean, I'd love for you to start by sharing your story, because you have an amazing story. What led you through your life, both personally and professionally, what led you to become a medical doctor and a naturopath? And what led you down this road where you've authored over 110 Kindle books, 35 health books. You're on a medical advisory board, the nonprofit Nutritional Magazine Association. I mean, your credentials go on and on. You've really been active in the health field. You're taking the word doctor seriously. The root word for doctor is docere, which means teacher. You're really taking it seriously to be the doctor and the healer and the teacher that you are for so many people. So first of all, welcome to the show, and I can't wait to hear your story.
Thank you, Ashley, and please call me Carolyn. I know I'm a doctor, so you don't have to tell me. And when you said about in the 90s I was doing magnesium, well, I went into practice in 1979. So I quickly went over to the online calculator. That was 38 years ago. That's a long time to be mucking around with medicine. And I did do my medical degree first. When I realized I wanted to go into medicine, there were no naturopathic schools. I was in Canada. I was in Halifax, Nova Scotia. So I went into medicine, but you'll love this, Ashley. When I went into the Dean of Medicine's office, because I was in undergraduate honors biology, and in some of my classes were pre-med students, and I didn't know that. But one day, 2 guys that I was hanging out with, they said they just got accepted into medical school, and I thought, these young punks, they know nothing. And I'd been reading nutrition and about what's her name, Adele Davis, and the various nutritionists back 45, 50 years ago. So I marched over to the Dean of Medicine's office, and who did I find but my high school guidance counselor, Miss Elliott, who had counseled me that my aptitude test showed I could be an executive secretary or a nurse. Right. That's how bad it was, back in the early, well, that would have been in the 60s. That's what they did to bright women back then. They put them into the office or the hospital to take care of doctors and their bosses. But anyway, that didn't last long. So Miss Elliott was pretty mortified, and she was on the medical acceptance committee. And I, I'm sure they helped and supported, because when I had my interview with the third year medical students as part of my application, they rejected me because they said I thought I could do something in medicine. They thought I was a Pollyanna because I said, well, there's so much that can be done. Nutrition, I probably just spilled my guts. I just told them what I thought could happen. And even back then I thought, by now, 30, 40 years down the road, everyone would be a naturopath and a medical doctor. Everyone would get on board taking care of health. And I even thought a 3-day work week was possible. But we know what happened with the commercialization of medicine and disease, and medicine just turning to the dark side. Seriously.
Mm-hmm.
When we just accepted drugs as the treatment of disease, and certainly in America, not in Canada, but all the American TV went to drug advertising on TV, consumer advertising, direct consumer advertising to people on the television, telling you, you have these symptoms, go and tell your doctor to give you this prescription.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I was living in New York at the time. I was doing The View. I was all over the place. And as soon as direct-to-consumer advertising went on the TV, they got rid of all the kind of natural medicine doctors that were giving advice that you can imagine. These drug advertisements that were costing millions of dollars, they weren't going to allow some teeny bopper doctor to come on and say, oh, you don't need that drug, you just need to take magnesium. So it changed the world. It really did change the world for us. And then the FDA got on the bandwagon. They won't allow doctors, especially doctors like myself that have dietary supplement products, they won't allow us to say, well, if you take magnesium, it might help your atrial fibrillation, your blood pressure, your migraine headaches, your angina, your leg cramps, your insomnia. They won't let you say that because it means you're going to stop taking the drugs. But what if those symptoms, and they're just a few of the 65 conditions that I have listed in my Magnesium Miracle book, 65 conditions that can be triggered or caused by magnesium deficiency that are misdiagnosed as diseases and treated with drugs. Am I getting away from myself here, Ashley? What
No.
question did you ask me? Let's get back on track.
You were right on track. You were sharing your story and what led you to become the doctor that you are today, but you outlined it perfectly. The advent of allowing drug manufacturers to advertise through mainstream media blackmailed the mainstream media to not allow natural solutions to be those messages to come through. And because at the time we didn't have the internet was just in its infancy, so of course we were getting all of our information still from TV and radio and newspapers, and those aggregates were controlled by, or they were controlled by the pharmaceutical companies, because the pharmaceutical companies were the largest advertising dollars.
Yeah.
And so you had a message of, hey, you could heal with natural solutions, as many naturopaths have these messages, but they no longer had a soapbox that reached the listeners, that reached the masses,
Mm-hmm.
because the way in which we get information was being controlled by the advertising dollars of the big pharma.
Yeah.
And
Perfect.
so
Yeah.
now, which is great because I just had a demographer on the show, and he talks about how, well, this is all going away. Everything you just said, the entire infrastructure is crumbling as we speak. No, I mean, I haven't paid for cable television since 2008. I mean, it is I've been streaming all the information I want. I can get through streaming, and I'll pay a little extra for no commercials on Hulu or on
Mm-hmm.
YouTube Red. But and I listen to a lot of shows like yours and other shows that you're just direct from
Mm-hmm.
creator to consumer with no filter in between, and we are now getting the right and finally the right information, like this podcast is able to bring people the right information without
Yeah.
big pharma's reach. And so that infrastructure is crumbling finally, and now you're able to really get this information out there, which is exciting. There's so many questions I have. um what led you to become a naturopath? Is it because you couldn't practice medicine in Halifax, and so you sought to become a naturopath, or what was there a moment, an aha moment that you had that said, I'm going this direction. I'm now going to go back to school and study naturopathic medicine.
Well, I quickly raced by that, but the reason I went into medicine is I was already my then boyfriend, now husband of 50 years. We'd been traveling around, not in a hippie format, but more in seeking out health alternative format way back in the 60s, and I got very involved with the health movement out in California, and that's where the Adele Davises and various people that we hear about as the ancients in the health movement, they were leading a crusade. I got involved. I was very interested. Moved back to Halifax, Nova Scotia. There is not even a health food store in the city, and I couldn't. What could I do? Just read my books, and harangue people a little bit to get healthy. They wouldn't listen to me. And so I ended up, as I said, in honors biology, and then find out that these young kids, because I was already a few years older than them because I traveled, these young kids were going to be doctors with absolutely no knowledge about health or exercise or anything. So I just said, well, I'll go into medicine and then they'll listen to me because I'll tell them about being healthy rather than that they're just going to suffer their diseases. So I had a plan when I entered medical school. By the time I was in my internship, which I accepted an internship up in Toronto, I found chiropractors who were starting the first naturopathic school up in Toronto. So in my internship, I was doing naturopathic classes and just sort of layering the bits of information I'd learned on my own. So when I went into practice in 1979, the minute I get out, the minute I had my license, the minute they let me, I started practicing. And I was practicing as a naturopath rather than as a medical doctor, but I was practicing with my medical license. So I was doing acupuncture and homeopathy and herbology and IV vitamins and whatever I could do in the natural sense, up to the point of occasionally needing to have a drug prescription, occasionally having a surgical procedure that had to be performed. And for those surgeries, I would book it on my day off and go into the surgery to help save organs because it is incredible what happens in the surgical suite. So
Mm.
you kind of have to have your favorite doctor there to help support you to save your organs. But anyway,
Oh,
that's a whole other
that
story.
is so true. A friend of mine who's fighting breast cancer and doing a really good job of it. She has a friend who just went in. Her friend is following 99% allopathic. She sees a naturopath, but she totally bought into the Swedish medical system, medical hospital here, and their cut, burn, and poison method. And she went in. They were gonna go remove her colon, and she wakes up and she finds out they removed many other organs, including her gallbladder. They said, oh, it's standard that if we do anything to the liver, we remove the gallbladder. It's just standard procedure. And so she is now has a very small amount of small intestines, no gallbladder, and she, has a pouch that she's going to poop in the rest of her life that farts. It makes farting noises, uncontrollably, and she is so embarrassed. And she's in her 30s, and she is so embarrassed, and she's so weak, and she feels so distraught. And she bought into a system. And what upsets me is that the chemotherapy they were using was working. It brought her tumors down by 50. They brought everything down by 50%. Then they stopped the chemo and did the surgery. And it's the question is, well, if the chemo was working, why did you stop it to cut out all her organs? Why didn't you just keep going and see if you could save any organs? It's there's when money is the motivator, the health and the long-term health of the patient is not in any way consideration. And so I love that the idea that you went with I think all doctors, I think all PCPs should be with the patient in the surgical suite, help making sure the right the right limb or whatever they're supposed to be doing to their exactly that everything is supposed to be the way it is, because the hubris of the surgeons, that ego that these surgeons have, does not take into consideration our long-term health and our lifestyle, the lifestyle of our physical being for the rest of our life. So
Right.
that's
Well, you said it, Ashley, when you said, "Oh, this is standard procedure," is
mm-hmm.
their quote excuse. Medicine and even surgery has become a recipe. It's a cookbook, and okay, this is what you do for this situation, and we see that in the medical reports we get, or I get emails all the time from Medscape, and they call them guidelines. And these guidelines will take a disease or a procedure and say, this is what you do, and doctors will follow it. And half the time it's either about the drugs or the surgery, and maybe 10% of the time it'll be about lifestyle or diet. But they've all proven to themselves, over the years, doctors have proven to themselves that diet and lifestyle, they don't matter, they don't mean anything, they don't work. And actually you can look at the 70% of the adult population is overweight now. So yeah, diet's not working. I've recently started exploring ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting, and I'm so happy that I overcame my bias about ketogenic diet, because it does work for people. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's another sidebar we can get into. But this standard operating procedure for medicine, it keeps doctors in line, because they will be chastised if they fall outside the standard operating procedure. I was attacked up in Canada when I said, quote, bad things about sugar on a Canadian national TV show back in 91 or 92. I was seriously attacked. The Sugar Institute of Canada went to my licensing board and attacked me, and my board admonished me, and then they sent spies into my practice. Yeah. And they got this young man to complain to my licensing board that I refused to give him a homeopathic remedy for his allergies on his first appointment. If I had given him a homeopathic remedy on his first appointment, he would have complained. So it was a total plant, and I knew that. I heard the backstory on that. With that, they came into my office and took files, and they were going to do this and that. They took files 1 week before I was on my way out of town for a year sabbatical in New York to do AIDS and chronic fatigue research. That was in 1990. Um, I'm getting my dates mixed up because I said I was on that TV show probably in 89. Anyway, years later, after I no longer had a license in Canada for years, because I have a California license, they held a mock court up in Toronto and took away a non-existent license of mine to send a message that you can't do any alternatives. There was a witch hunt on at the time against about a dozen doctors, two of whom committed suicide. So if people wonder why doctors don't get involved with nutrition and alternatives and dietary supplements, it's because they're attacked. You
Mm-hmm.
cannot go against the standard practice of medicine.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. One of my heroes, which is, I'm sure you know him, Dr. Joel Wallach, he's been attacked, I think,
Mhm.
11 times by the FDA. He's gone up against them each time. There was 12 times. He won in court 11 times, and the last time they dropped it. But he's had to go up against it.
Mhm.
And he's very outspoken. If anyone knows Dr. Joel Wallach, they know he's incredibly outspoken. He's not going to back down. But you have to have gall. You've got to have chutzpah. If you're going to be a holistic health practitioner,
Yeah.
you're
Uh-huh.
going up against, you're the David and they're the Goliath. But what I love is that now in masses we are as a population moving towards it. You truly are the doctor of the future, because you've been sort of you would have been totally accepted if you had just started your practice what you were doing in the
Mm.
80s. If you just started now, there wouldn't have been any controversy, right? But you've really you're 30 years or more ahead of the curve, which is exciting, because now you're finally seeing things come to fruition. Now you're seeing so many people say magnesium's good for you. You hear it on, Dr. Oz and all those
Mhm.
shows. Everyone's saying how good magnesium is, and you're going, yeah, I've been telling people that for over 30 years. Finally, you're listening, right?
Uh-huh. That's true, and we'll get to it, Ashley. It is about the type of magnesium too, because so many people try it, they get the
Mm-hmm.
laxative effect, and then they walk away. So that's the other part of the education that I try to bring to people about the need to take a form that really stays with you. But yes, there is vindication about magnesium. I see a lot now about sugar and how the sugar lobby groups changed the whole dialogue about sugar and made it about fat. They saw the research back now 30, 40 years ago showing that sugar was bad for the heart.
Mm-hmm.
They buried that research and put the blame on fat.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened then is even though now we know that olive oil, coconut oil, and butter are all good for the body, they put those down. They made these trans fats that we now know are even worse for your health than sugar. And they changed the whole dialogue to the point where now, with all this sugar, all this excess carbohydrate, that the body just cannot sustain. What happens when you keep eating carbohydrates is that you keep making insulin. The insulin will push some of the sugars into your cells for energy, but the rest of it will go into storage, into liver storage, which is why we get an increase in fatty liver now, and it'll go into fat storage. And as long as you keep eating carbohydrates constantly, you will never burn fat.
Mm-hmm.
So the beauty of the ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting is you stop eating carbohydrates to a very great extent. And after your glycogen sugar stores in the liver or in your muscle cells, after they're used up, which only takes about a day and a half, when they're gone, you start fat burning and you lose weight. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And now you'll read one of the books I'm reading now about ketogenic is all the doctors who've been attacked because they're treating diabetes with diet and not putting people on drugs and insulin.
Mm-hmm.
So it's again it's this constant battle on all levels of trying to get the right health information to people. And I know you said, yes, the internet absolutely has opened things up and allowed people the information, but you'll notice that many of the health sites now, the subtext is they're being supported by drug companies.
Mm,
And the drug companies are saying, well, you should be afraid of taking too much magnesium, and if there's 1 in a million chance of a dietary supplement causing a problem, they will focus on that in these reports. There have never been deaths due to dietary supplements in the past. It's at least 10 years there's been no deaths, but they keep trying to say that these things are dangerous and you're going to die. I think it was 20, 30 years ago, there was a tryptophan amino acid that was made in Japan, and one of the binders was some genetically modified substance, and people died. And the anti-dietary supplement lobby constantly talks about that as the reason why you should avoid dietary supplements. So there's still a battle. There's
mm-hmm.
no question there's still a battle, but thank goodness our voices can be heard.
You brought up this the attack on natural medicine. Are you up to date on what the FDA is doing to homeopathy?
Oh, absolutely. It is just horrifying.
For those listeners who don't know, can you share with us what is going on? Has it become official yet? Has the FDA officially made it so that we can no longer buy certain homeopathic remedies, or is there still a chance to fight it?
There is what they call write-in or call-in period until March, which is just next month, where the public is allowed to comment on these quote guidelines that the FDA is proposing, that they make homeopathic remedies into drugs. And the story on that is, well, back in 2005, I started going to Codex Alimentarius meetings. I went to one in Bonn, Germany, and one in Rome. And Codex is trying to work with the World Trade Organization and the World Health
Mm-hmm.
Organization to standardize the shipment of dietary supplements across borders. And what they're well, it's food and dietary supplements. So what they're doing in order to assuage the World Trade Organization is trying to allow as much toxicity as possible in the foods, so that anybody can ship, bad food, and they just want to have low potency synthetic dietary supplements shipping across borders. And this is worldwide. They've got all the countries in the world trying to participate. And this is one thing where I like Trump, because he's stopping these trade agreements, which are totally for a one world government.
Mm-hmm.
They just trying to standardize everything. And if a country that's in this Codex trade agreement does not follow the rules that were passed, and I guess it is 2005 now, where I just ran screaming, they get fined. Like on a daily basis, they can be fined hundreds of thousands of dollars for not following the trade agreements. It's
Mm-hmm.
very, I don't, it's brutal.
I
So,
love that you brought up Codex Alimentarius. I saw Rima Libo, Dr. Rima Libo did an amazing talk in 2000. I think it was about 2005, or is when I
mhm,
saw it. It's on YouTube somewhere. I'm gonna see if I can find it and put it in the show notes of the podcast. It completely blew my mind because many people don't know that Codex is still, they're still actively trying. The World Health Organization is still trying to get it passed, and it is
mm,
all about world government, one world government, which
mhm,
is not in our best interest. It is not. We do not want this to happen. And so I know you just gave an outline to add to that. For those who've never heard of Codex Alimentarius,
mm,
it's this, like, isn't it like a 15? Is it 1500 or 15,000 page document? It's a huge document. I can't remember how big it is. Where
mm,
somewhere in there it's sort of it seems really good. Like on the outside it goes, this is how chickens and eggs should be handled and
Uh-huh.
processed, and you think, oh, that every country around the world should process their food the same for health reasons. Doesn't that
Mm.
sound good? And then halfway through you realize they want to regulate yoga, Reiki, acupuncture,
Mhm. Mhm.
homeopathy. And of course, what are they going to do? They're going to ban them.
Yeah.
And some countries have signed them, like Australia, and you cannot. It is a class 1 felony drug to have a high potency vitamin C on you.
Yes.
If you walk around with a few hundred milligrams of vitamin C in your purse, you could be sent to jail like you're carrying heroin.
Mhm.
This is a threat to all holistic medicine. So that's
Mm.
why when I saw the FDA was going after homeopathy, I thought, this is Codex coming in, and I got so
Yeah.
scared. So I did send in a petition.
Mhm.
Is there something on your website, or is there any information so the listeners could participate in the petition?
I refer people to, and you may know them, Ashley, the Natural Health Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
They're spearheading the any sort of suppression of natural medicine. But see, we've gone through this every 10 years, it seems to me, they attack homeopathy. And then we push back, and then they pull back. But we do have to keep the pushback because they're getting more and more adamant. Because homeopathy is a multi-billion-dollar business. All these natural remedies, dietary supplements. There's I think about 60,000 dietary supplements out there, and medicine looks upon them, drug companies look upon them as competition.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of looking at the fact that dietary supplements are being lost in, there's so few minerals in the soil anymore. They're being lost in food processing. People don't know how to eat properly, eat organic. So we do need dietary supplements to make up for all the losses. 100 years ago, we could get, what was it, 500 milligrams of magnesium in our average diet. Now we're likely to get 200. And none of this information is getting through to the public. And at the same time, the FDA, as I said, is trying to suppress dietary supplements. And they're all for Codex Alimentaris.
Mm, amazing. We have so much we could talk about. I love that you recently you looked into ketogenic and that you're seeing the health benefits. I think it's such a fine line to walk. I've been through keto a few times. I'm keto adapted now, and it's such a fine line to walk. It's so easy to eat too much meat, which then just turns to glycogen, right? And it's so
Mhm.
easy to go that route. It's so easy to not eat enough healthy fat to go into ketosis. And then when someone's in ketosis, it doesn't put a lot of stress on the body, especially magnesium. Isn't there a need for more
Um,
mineral supplementation when in a ketogenic state?
yes, absolutely. I think all the extra processing that the body goes through to burn fat for energy and go into what we call gluconeogenesis, the new glucose being generated, because we do need some of that. So there's a lot of extra work in the body, which some people say, well, that's helped your metabolism. It burns off more calories, and that's a good thing. But when you're doing all that extra work, you do need extra cofactors for those metabolic processes. And something I haven't gotten around to saying yet is magnesium is necessary for 700 to 800 different enzymatic processes in the body. The next highest one, as far as I know, is zinc at 180 enzymatic processes. So magnesium is way up there in the stratosphere. For making energy in the Krebs cycle, there are 8 steps. Six of those steps require magnesium. So one of the side effects, quote, side effects of the keto diet, they talk about, oh, you can get leg cramps, so just do an Epsom salts bath. So they have the remedies for when you develop the magnesium deficiency symptoms. But what I've found putting people on my various products, are mostly minerals, 100% absorbed minerals, they just breeze through the ketogenic diet. They breeze through the fasting. They don't have side effects. I even tell people to go on a bit of a yeast detox. A ketogenic diet is pretty much a yeast detox diet, but I tell people, well, go on some bentonite clay, liquid bentonite clay, mix that with psyllium seed powder, shake that up in 4 to 6 ounces of water, drink that down and take some extra water. So there's your fiber bulk that you also can be missing with the keto diet. But that psyllium and bentonite will pull out the yeast toxins or just the plain toxins from your fat cells that you're breaking down because you're breaking down fat and you're fasting, you're detoxing. So the keto flu is nothing more than detoxification, and you can prepare for that and you can prevent it. What I do for my keto is I'll make a huge salad, but with the protein in it, it's a handful of cut up chicken or some tuna or some salmon with a couple of big tablespoons of macadamia nut pate. Macadamia nuts are so high in fat, most people avoid them, but they're awesome. You can make this pate with 8 ounces of lemon juice concentrate, 4 ounces of water, a teaspoon of unrefined sea salt, a handful of garlic. You spin that up first, and then you put in a good two, maybe even 2.5, 3 cups of macadamia nuts. Spin that up. I'm talking about a high-speed blender, and you get a mayonnaise to die for. So
Wow.
you use that on everything. If you want some good fat, okay, here's the pate. And then in your salad, you're getting all those greens, which have very few sugar carbs. They're mostly fiber. And you throw in your sauerkraut so that you have your probiotic.
Mm-hmm.
You put in a lot of avocado. That's high fat. You can put in I put in some craisins, cranberries in a salad are awesome. I have like 12 ingredients in my salad, and it's so filling, it's so as well energizing. It keeps me in ketosis so that by the evening I'm just eating like one 2 meals a day, and then in the evening I'll actually cut up about a cup, maybe a little less, of frozen strawberries, frozen organic strawberries. I'll cut them up, pretty fine, and I'll put in about a quarter cup of heavy whipping cream. I don't whip it. I just put the liquid in and maybe some kefir just for a nice bite. And I have ice cream. It is
Mm-hmm.
so tasty. So that's how I'm doing my keto right now. There's other things going on. I'll do a banana, 2 inches of frozen banana cut up. I'll roll that in about a tablespoon of cacao powder, a tablespoon of coconut oil, a little bit of just like sugar substitute, and you roll that together, and it solidifies immediately into this what does look a bit like a turd, but it's so tasty. It's awesome. It's down your throat before you even notice. So there are fun things to do with the ketogenic diet. It's not all just bacon. And I've been really getting I've been getting into cheese a lot. Now I'm very anti-cheese usually because of the yeast overgrowth. Because I'm big on telling people about yeast from taking too many antibiotics, needing too much sugar. But there are low lactose cheeses. Now, lactose is a sugar, so milk sugars will grow yeast, just like table sugar will. But there's brick cheese, even cheddar is low, Colby is low, Gyre is low, Havarti is low, Shingo is low, Provolone is low, Swiss is low. Just look up low lactose cheeses. And I'm finding it's not triggering my yeast. It fills me up. I mean, just an ounce of these cheese. It's 5 quarts of milk to make 1 pound of cheese.
Wow.
So it is pretty high in protein. I think there's only a couple grams extra of fat compared to the protein, but again, you can balance that off. So anyway, yeah, I'm pretty excited about this, and especially since I lost about 15 pounds of fruit fat. I live in Maui, so I was eating so much fruit that the carbohydrates of the fruit went into my fat cells.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't stop them.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I don't blame you. I mean, the fruit there is to die for. So,
Hmm.
it's worth it. And with the ketogenic diet, you can also, I mean, someone who's a vegetarian, it's a little bit harder, but vegetarians or
Hmm.
vegans can also do it because it's not, like you said, it's not all bacon. There are ways that people can be flexible. And another thing that people don't know about the ketogenic diet is that it's a lot of vegetables, a lot of leafy greens. You want to get lots and lots of vegetables because I think people think it's Atkins where it's just like bacon, bacon,
Uh,
bacon. No,
uh,
it's like basically the vegetables are the vehicle for your fat. So like you said, you make a salad, it's a vehicle for your fat. Or I can
mhm,
drizzle. I like Udo's Choice oil
mm,
from, you get
mm,
it in the refrigerated section of the health food store, and it has like flax and hemp and a few other oils in it, and then I drizzle that on a big salad, or after I've steamed some or sautéed some kale and things like that, I'll drizzle it on, and I think it has
mm,
sesame in it. It has a delicious flavor profile. But
mhm,
yeah, I love the ketogenic diet, and I think everyone should try it because it's a great detox from sugar. It
mhm,
gives the pancreas a nice rest. It is a fantastic for like you said, getting rid of yeast, and also an
mhm,
anti-inflammatory, believe it or not, an anti-inflammatory diet. A lot of
mhm.
people find that if they had chronic joint pain or back pain, that goes away after doing a ketogenic diet for a few months. So, do you think that people who do ketogenic diet should do it under the, I mean, if they're relatively healthy, they can do it on their own, or do you think they should see a naturopath and just check in? Because it's kind of controversial whether someone should be under the care of a doctor while doing this diet.
Well, I wrote a little booklet on it, a free booklet, and we'll get to my websites later. And I say this is not to take the place of a doctor who could help you if you're a diabetic, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the way some awesome doctors like Dr. Jason Fung, Fung, at dietdoctor.com, they have laid it out so nicely. And I think too, Ashley, when you bring up the point you should go to a naturopath, I think people really have to take responsibility for their own health on
Mm-hmm.
so many levels. Because if you go to a naturopath or a holistic medical doctor, they have their own way of running things and they have their own supplement shelf. And half of their income comes from selling supplements. So I know more than half of the people listening who've been to holistic type doctors will agree that you come out with about a dozen supplements and you don't really know what you're doing with them. And I began to be kind of anti supplements when I was trying to work with my heart palpitations and leg cramps and neck pain and all the rest of it, trying to get healthy, and then come to realize when I was asked by Random House in the late 90s to write a book on magnesium, I realized, oh my gosh, I'm the poster child for magnesium deficiency. And then I find out I can't take one pill of magnesium without getting the laxative effect.
Mm-hmm.
So the 10 years after I wrote the book, it finally came out in, I think it was 2003. I was trying to interest mineral manufacturer in researching making a non-laxative magnesium. And they said, no, too expensive, requires too much education of the population in order for them to know to take this compared to the others that are so much cheaper. And finally, I made my own. And what I realized when people started to take my Remag magnesium, they said, oh my gosh, I don't need these other dozen supplements that I've been taking because the label says I need it, or the hype about it says I'll die if I don't have these supplements. And what would happen is people would say to me, well, I've been taking all these supplements, but I really need help. And I would say, well, obviously the supplements aren't working or you wouldn't need help. So people will take supplements based on what they read about it. It's like they're buying the text of the supplement. They don't notice a difference. And what happened with the Remag is people started noticing right away. They started feeling better. Everybody is different, but because magnesium is needed in 700-800 different enzymatic processes, there's a lot to work on there, and people would start feeling better, and then they'd start questioning their other supplements and say, well, gosh, I don't feel this way from these others. I wonder if they're even helping. So I
Mm-hmm.
tell people, well, either wean off them or stop it for a couple of weeks and then take it and see if you feel different, because it's like going on a wonderful new diet. You feel better. It's like when you start drinking enough water, and when you put sea salt in your water, you feel better. I start with water guidelines. I tell people, take your body weight in pounds, cut that in half, and drink that many ounces of water a day, into which you put a quarter teaspoon of sea salt for every liter. Now, this became funny the other day when I heard that people were castigating Tom Brady, our football player Tom Brady.
Mm-hmm.
He has a book out, and he has a water recommendation that sounds very close to, it sounds like what I tell people. And the attacks he's been getting for telling people to drink half their body weight in ounces of water is just out of this world. And I've noticed this many times actually, where a celebrity figure will come out with a health regimen, whether they have cancer or whether they're just trying to do some sort of health book. They will be put down until they're squashed
Mm-hmm.
because they have too much media attention.
Mm-hmm.
And Brady is just giving people good information, and all over the internet now it's like, don't drink that much water, it'll kill you. It's incredible. So what's the average person supposed to think? Is all these doctors are saying that Brady is he should lose his medical license for telling people to drink this much water. It's just crazy, and it's all based on the commercialism of our bodies and the commercialism of disease, where drugs are making a lot of people very rich, and they do not want competition.
Even if we're hydrated, I mean, imagine, and so much of the population's dehydrated. You can
Mm.
see that in blood tests. The I can't remember what parameter it is, but the you can look and go, okay, you clearly didn't drink enough water before doing this blood test.
Uh-huh.
I've had my naturopath, sit down and wave their finger at me, and that's because the naturopathic parameters are so much tighter than the MD. The MD is almost never going to tell you you're dehydrated unless you're like falling over and need an IV bag.
Hmm.
And so just imagine how many drugs you could prescribe to a population that's dehydrated. What are the side effects? What are the effects of dehydration? So you've got headaches,
Hmm.
you have blood pressure problems, you have energy problems. Isn't it something like, I had Dr. Molly Niedermeyer, who used to be Dr. Linton. She was the dean of Bastyr University, but
Uh,
she
hmm.
said that if we drop 5% of our water need, we lose 25% of our energy.
Oh,
So
wow. Wow.
once we're just 5% under, like under the empty tank. So, if
Mhm.
if you're only drinking 2 liters of water a day, that might not be enough, and then you've lost
Mhm.
25% of your energy. And so, what other symptoms are related to just dehydration alone that they could be prescribing a drug instead?
Right. And what's amazing about hydration is that you need that water inside the cells to pull in minerals and vice versa. Minerals and water work together.
Ah.
So when a person starts taking the sea salt in their water, and maybe they don't drink enough water, or they start taking my Remeg or my Remite multiple minerals, they'll start feeling dehydrated. We'll get in customer service, we'll get people saying, "Oh, my tongue's dry, what's going?" And of course, we're able to say to them, "Well, are you drinking enough water? Because minerals require water inside the cells. And when you don't have enough minerals inside the cells, your water actually will go into edema. You'll start getting the ankle swelling and the foot swelling
Mm-hmm.
because the water follows minerals inside the cells, does its job, and then your body is clicking along quite nicely. And yes, I agree that this whole business about dehydration, well, if the cells throughout your whole body aren't working properly, nothing's working properly. So you'll have all these symptoms. You can be sleepless and the lack of energy. You can be confused or irritable, and your heart can be beating rapidly as your blood oxygen is trying to push itself around in the body to keep up. It's incredible. And a lot of elderly get dehydrated because they don't want to have to keep getting up and going to the bathroom. But you see this business of you drink just a plain water, it will go right through you. But if you drink water with your minerals, then it'll go to your cells and do its work, and you actually have less urination, or you just you don't push it right into your bladder. It's busy doing its work. It's quite amazing the reports we get just from the hydration and the sea salt. And it has to be unrefined sea salt, Ashley, because there's a lot of hype about sea salt now, so there's a lot of cheap brands out there.
Mm-hmm.
I think a sea salt has to have a certain coloration to it, because if it's just pure white, I think it shows it's been refined.
Mm-hmm.
The sea salt in Maui is actually copper colored, and there's the pink Himalayan salt. So again, when something becomes commercialized, then it's going to be cheapened.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about the company called Real Salt out of Utah? Do you like their salt?
I've used it. I think it comes from the Utah lakes. It does have a pinkness to it, so I'm good with that. I do rotate my salts though.
Mm-hmm.
I've got one now that's sort of gray, and they say it's the best salt, but I just rotate. It's like diversity. You
Mm.
just keep moving things around, and that's getting quickly back to codex. They wanted to standardize everything. The German delegation headed codex. The main I don't know, foreman of the whole business was German, and their example of the best dietary supplement was Centrum.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
That's horrible. That just moves right through you.
yep,
And
yeah. The
oh.
nurses in hospitals say they know when Centrum has passed through because it clinks in the bedpan. It just doesn't even get dissolved in the body. It's found in sewage treatment plants to clog up the whole process. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
that is their idea of the best supplement. And you know the reason why, and they say it. They say because it doesn't interfere with drugs, which means you can keep taking your drugs, and Centrum is not going to do anything to your body to mean you'll need less drugs, which is what happens when you do take well absorbed dietary supplements. Your body, if your symptoms are are related to mineral magnesium deficiency, etc., you won't need the drugs to treat the symptoms.
I take a multi-mineral that's a liquid with lots of magnesium in it, and I love it. It changed my life. It just changed my life. The depth of my sleep is like waking up from the dead. I wake up in the morning like I felt like I was dead all night. I was so well rested. I've slept so deeply, so soundly. And I get busy. I forget to take it, and within a few days, my body tells me I start to get a little bit of aches in my legs, and I think to myself, I lie there in bed and I go, okay, I got to get up and go take my liquid mineral supplement, because I think to myself, how many people have magnesium deficiency that are put on a drug for quote unquote restless leg syndrome?
Oh
I
gosh,
have
yeah.
given bottles of this away to friends and family who tell me they have restless leg syndrome, and they're put on a drug for restless leg syndrome, because then they have side effects of that drug, and it's just like, you are taking a drug for you have a mineral deficiency. Your body is expressing it has a mineral deficiency. Your body is it's like if someone was hungry and their stomach is growling, and they're given a prescription drug for that. It's like your body is crying out for a nutrient, and they've figured out to make a drug for that nutrient deficiency symptom. It is maddening. And if they just took a magnesium that their body could absorb and utilize, then they wouldn't have that symptom anymore, and they wouldn't need that drug. So it is really a big uh, natural medicine is a huge competitor
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
to this synthetic drug industry. Let's talk a little bit about the absorption, the bioavailability of minerals. What type of magnesium? So there's like magnesium citrate and all these, different forms of magnesium. What are the ones that you look on the bottle and you go, that's a good form of magnesium? You know that your body is going to utilize it.
Well, what's interesting, when I wrote the first couple of editions of the magnesium book, I was trying to find that information. Like what's the absorption? There really isn't a lot of literature on it. The studies have not been done. And when you look at something like magnesium oxide, the first studies were done on magnesium oxide because some really smart businesswoman who owned a magnesium oxide company, she gave tons of free samples to magnesium researchers. And so when they wrote up the study, yeah, magnesium oxide does this and that. And it always worked. It was always beneficial. But then a few years ago, someone finally did an absorption study. Magnesium oxide is only 4% absorbed.
Wow.
And the rest of it becomes laxative in a lot of people. I mean, a few milligrams of magnesium oxide, and I'm done. And when in my first books, I was writing out that, like, magnesium oxide, a 500 milligram of magnesium oxide has 300 milligrams of elemental magnesium. And you think, oh, that's a lot of magnesium. But if it's only 4% absorbed, what's that? Like 12 milligrams.
Mm.
And personally, I had to take 1,200 milligrams of my 100% absorbed Remag to get my heart palpitations under control. So then you look at things like magnesium taurate. A 500 milligram tablet of magnesium taurate only has 50 milligrams of elemental magnesium. I would have needed what 20 pills of this magnesium taurate, and I would have been in the washroom all day. So it's kind of tricky. With the last edition of Magnesium Miracle that just came out August 2017, I just cut to the chase. I said, take Epsom salts baths, take magnesium citrate in powder form, mix it in water and sip it through the day. If that's only going to be maybe 20% absorbed, so it's not really going to give you a real therapeutic amount. And then I said the third one is my Remag magnesium. It's a liquid. 1 teaspoon is 300 milligrams. and you can put 1 or 2 teaspoons in your sea salted water and sip that through the day and get your magnesium into every cell in your body. And for the most part, it's not going to get in your intestines. Of course, being a medical doctor and a naturopath, I attract a lot of very ill customers.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be very toxic. They'll be on a dozen drugs. They'll have tried everything. And they may have a laxative effect to the magnesium. They may feel stirred up because all their enzyme systems are starting to open up. And they may not know what it's like to have energy after having chronic fatigue for years.
Mm-hmm.
So on the label, we say to people, start with a quarter teaspoon. Quarter teaspoon, that's 75 milligrams. Some people, we say, start with 10 drops. Each drop has 2.5 milligrams. So even at 10 drops, people will say, oh gosh, I'm starting to feel better. So the absorption, the level and degree of illness that a person has, what they're trying to come back from. We'll get people, like someone emailed in a testimonial the other day. He'd had heart palpitations since he was 16.
Mm.
And over the years, he's had his ablations done, the surgical ablations for heart palpitations, been on innumerable drugs and on and on and on, still having symptoms. And I think he's in his 50s now. We've had a lot of stories like this. And within a week of taking Remag, he starts to feel better.
Oh.
So and then I jump in and I say, this is not us treating a disease. This is us giving someone magnesium in an absorbable form to treat a lifelong magnesium deficiency.
Yes. Right.
I mean,
Right.
how else can someone after a few days start feeling so much better?
Exactly. Now, there's, according to Dr. Joel Wallach in his extensive research, he says the body needs 60 minerals, of course,
Mm-hmm.
in varying forms, like in varying amounts.
Mm-hmm.
And so calcium is the next thing that people think of when they think of magnesium, because the thought process is the body needs a ratio of calcium with magnesium, and I don't want to say too much magnesium to you, because it's hard. It's If someone's deficient, it's hard to say any
Yeah.
magnesium is too much. But if someone takes magnesium without calcium, doesn't it stimulate the body, the parathyroid glands, to release calcium from the bones in order to bring the ratio back into balance?
Mm, yeah, good questions. First of all, there are 72 minerals in sea salt. That's
Mm.
why I go for the unrefined sea salt in your water, just
Mm-hmm.
to grab those. Um, my Remite has 12 of the major minerals, and Remag, of course, is all magnesium. And I say the only mineral you can take in very high amounts is magnesium, because it has this incredible fail-safe. If you take too much even of my Remag, or if you've become saturated, if you've taken it for a few months, all your magnesium deficiency symptoms are gone. You can look at some blood tests. RBC magnesium is much more effective and efficient than serum magnesium. We can get to that. If you follow all that and then you start getting a bit of a laxative effect, then you're saturated. So there's this incredible fail-safe. When I first started doing my own Remag for my heart palpitations, and seriously, Ashley, it was very selfish of me to create Remag, because I needed it. I couldn't find anything that would fix me.
Mm-hmm.
So at 4 teaspoons for about a year and a half, I was doing well. It was actually about a year or a year and a half into it, I started Remite. And very quickly, I only needed 3 teaspoons, because I think I was treating other mineral deficiencies symptoms with more magnesium, more Remag. So I only needed 3, and now several years later, I'm down to 1 teaspoon a day. I take half a teaspoon twice a day with a half a teaspoon of lemon juice concentrate and about 4 to 6 ounces of water. I'm drinking lemon juice pretty much. And if I take more than that, if I take 3 1/2 teaspoons, I start getting a bit of laxative effect. So I know I'm saturated. In terms of calcium, we have a really big problem there. I've put several studies in my Magnesium Miracle book describing research of women who just simply take calcium supplements.
Mm-hmm.
We're finding out they have a higher risk of heart disease.
Mm-hmm.
The calcium in these pills is only about 4% absorbed. There is not the laxative fail safe as there is for magnesium. Calcium actually causes constipation, so it'll build up and it will precipitate in soft tissue if you don't have enough magnesium or K2. Vitamin K2, I tell people to get that in a product called Blue Ice Royal, and there's a lot of information I have on that. If you Google my name and Blue Ice Royal, K2 and magnesium are necessary to make calcium go where it's supposed to. If a person is eating dairy products, they usually have enough dietary calcium. The United Kingdom and the World Health Organization, their RDA, recommended daily allowance for calcium, is 500 to 700 milligrams. A 8-ounce cup of yogurt is about 350 milligrams of calcium. Drink some kefir, eat a few ounces of cheese, and you've got your 600 milligrams of calcium a day. I find when I'm on the ketogenic diet and eating a lot of cheese, I might need a little more Remag because I'm getting so much calcium. So it's really been a burden on our society because we looked at osteoporosis as just being a calcium deficiency and recommend 1,200, 1,500 milligrams of calcium a day to women.
Mm-hmm.
And that then precipitates in the wrong places. DCIS, disseminated intraductal carcinoma, is from calcium supplements, in my opinion, and a lack of magnesium. Magnesium dissolves calcium away from the soft tissues. It doesn't dissolve it from the bones, heaven forbid. It puts it in the bones where it belongs. But DCIS, it's a pre-cancer based on finding calcification in the breast. It's got nothing to do with calcium, but I've read books where there's one book of a woman struggle with DCIS. They did everything to her: the surgeries, biopsies, putting little trackers in her breast, and then uh, doing major surgery, and then chemo and radiation, and then told her you're cured.
Mm.
And she probably didn't even have any relationship to breast cancer at all. It's just incredible. They started saying that breast cancer could be cured because they started throwing in the DCIS statistics, saying that every time they did a biopsy or surgery on DCIS, they cured cancer.
Oh, and it's a mineral deficiency. It's
Hmm.
a magnesium deficiency. My understanding is when when your magnesium is deficient, the calcium is unable to be dissolved
Dissolved.
and properly placed in the bones, like because K2 and magnesium help the body to put calcium in the bones. And
Exactly.
then kidney stones. That's another big one.
Hmm.
A lot of so this is dear friend of mine took the advice of Dr. Wallach and uh cured himself of all kidney stones because he needed a multi-mineral supplement that with a which had calcium, had magnesium in it. But that people MDs go around saying that kidney stones are caused by too much minerals, and
Mm.
that you need to stop taking supplements and stop, eating dairy, and you need to, lower your calcium,
Mhm.
consumption, because they're caused by it. When it's not the case. Isn't it the case that the body is not placing the minerals in the right place, and not doesn't have enough minerals, and so
Mhm.
so it gets caught up in the kidneys, like, because the parathyroid gland um asks the bones to release minerals into the soft tissue, because the person is so deficient, dietarily deficient. And I know I've seen news articles, or news letters that you've put out in the past, discussing how to reverse kidney stones using proper mineral supplementation. Can you get into that a little bit?
Yeah, it's mainly magnesium, and B6 helps as well because it helps in the research. It helps magnesium work. But again, with the Remag, it's since it's actually I didn't say, but it's a picometer sized stabilized ion of magnesium. When you take a magnesium compound, like I was trying to say, there's only a certain amount of elemental magnesium involved, and that compound tries it wants to stay attached. It's only kind of episodically and intermittently and in fractions of a second that mineral compounds will break apart as ions in the bloodstream or in a liquid. That's why liquid minerals are better, because the ions will separate, and if the cell can grab the mineral when the ions are separated, then you've got absorption. What my chemist did with Remag is make the magnesium ion stabilized long enough that it can be fully absorbed. So magnesium, and then if people take other forms of magnesium, B6, in many studies has shown to help dissolve these calcified kidney stones. And while we're on it, kidney disease is getting pretty epidemic,
Mm-hmm.
and that is because the renal arteries or the kidney arteries, like the neck carotid arteries, like the heart coronary arteries, they're developing huge calcifications, and it prevents the flow of blood to the kidneys, prevents the clearing of toxins. So kidney disease results, kidney failure is huge. And the horrible thing about kidney disease is because quote, too much magnesium has to be cleared through the kidneys and through the bowels as a laxative, but cleared through the kidneys, they say, well, anybody with any type of kidney disease should not take magnesium. And this is horrifying because they need the magnesium to dissolve the calcification in their poor kidneys. And anybody with a kidney problem, please, well, either call my customer service and we'll send you the chapter for free, or get my magnesium book. And I have a whole section on the kidneys need magnesium. Actually, I probably have done a blog on it as well, but it just proves to people that they're being misled, because you'll have a 1 in a million chance of some problem with magnesium, and then it becomes the standard.
Mm-hmm.
This whole business back to calcium and magnesium ratios, that was a mistranslation from a French magnesium researcher who said never, never, never allow um, more than 2 parts calcium to 1 part magnesium in diet, supplements, and water intake. And people took that, oh, well, we have to have 2 parts calcium to 1 part magnesium. Well, now with Tums being used for not just for antacid, but they're using Tums as a calcium supplement,
Mm.
fortified with calcium, orange juice, all the supplements people are being told to take, high dairy intake. The ratio in North America is about 10 parts calcium to 1 part magnesium, and it should be 1-to-1 ratio. 600 milligrams of calcium, 600 milligrams of magnesium, but in 100% absorbed form.
Mm. What other, I mean, I imagine that there's hundreds of possible side effects of or the outcry, the effect of a magnesium deficiency in the body.
Mm.
I know there's over 200 for calcium deficiency, which is what you're saying is very unlikely if you eat a standard American diet, with, or at least, consume enough dairy. You're definitely not calcium deficient, but you could still have osteoporosis because you could probably be K2
Uh-huh.
deficient and magnesium deficient and other nutrients that help the body, aid the body in taking the calcium and delivering it to the bones. So
Mhm.
it's not, the answer isn't take more calcium if you have osteoporosis or osteopenia. You're saying get the magnesium and you get K2. Um,
Mhm.
and so I just want to know, so you could paint the picture a little bit so that maybe listeners can perk up and go, whoa, wait a second, that sounds like me. What other common symptoms are
Mm.
would let people know that they are really magnesium deficient?
Okay, let's go through a list until you stop me. Acid reflux,
Wow.
spasming of the lower esophageal sphincter at the juncture of the stomach can
Mm-hmm.
leave the sphincter open and cause reflux.
Mm-hmm.
Adrenal fatigue, chronic stress, anxiety, and panic attacks use up your magnesium, and then your adrenals and your adrenaline get trigger happy, so you jump at the sound of a a car. What did they call a car exhaust?
Oh,
Car
a
backing up.
backfire.
Backfire,
Mm-hmm.
Alzheimer's disease, all the heavy metals in the brain. Magnesium helps detoxify. Angina, of course, the heart is one big muscle, and what we didn't say yet is that magnesium controls muscles and nerves. If you don't have enough magnesium, your muscles go into spasm because they have too much calcium. So angina is a heart spasm that then can lead to a heart attack, and it's controlled by magnesium. Anxiety and panic attacks, arthritis, asthma, atherosclerosis, that calcium buildup in the blood vessels, even blood clots. Magnesium, I say it doesn't act like blood thinner, but it prevents the excess calcium from building up, and calcium triggers blood clots. And any bowel diseases, IBS, constipation, people who have any sort of spasming of their bowel, um, brain dysfunction. There's a free copy of a 355-page book called Magnesium in the Central Nervous System that people can get online. I tell people, print up some of these things you get online, especially if they're in a journal, and take them to your doctor. Your doctor doesn't have time to do the research, but see, what they have to have in their chart is some sort of justification for going beyond the standard practice of drug medicine. So you can give them the ammunition they need so they don't get in trouble. Any sort of teeth grinding, that's muscles clenching, that's magnesium deficiency. Cholesterol elevation, the enzyme that balances cholesterol is controlled by magnesium. And
Wow.
actually, it's the enzyme that's killed by the statin drugs.
Dun dun dun. This is, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, you just blew my mind. So they developed a drug to make your body unable to regulate
Mm-hmm.
the
Cholesterol.
cholesterol so that
Yeah.
you need that drug.
Yeah.
I mean, if we were to believe cholesterol's the big bad voodoo daddy that
Even, yeah,
they
which
say it
it's
is,
not.
which is
Yeah,
not.
which it's not. And if I'll sidebar over to my list of fluoride-containing drugs. Statins are fluoride drugs. Decades ago, they started binding fluorine molecules in a lot of drugs to make them stronger, so that the drugs could go through fatty cells, the fat membrane surrounding cells. So what's happened in the test tube? They say, "Oh, the fluoride doesn't break down. Don't worry, don't worry." But what have we got now with ciprofloxacin? It's a fluoride drug. It's causing tendon rupture. It's a black box warning
Mm.
now. So these athletes who sweat out their magnesium don't replace it. They replace it with Gatorade, which is sugar and table salt. They become very magnesium deficient. They may, succumb to a flu or a cold. They get a Cipro antibiotic and they keep working out and they tear a tendon. And I say it's because the intestinal organisms, all those bacteria in the trillions of bacteria in the intestines, their job is to break down drugs. They release the fluorine molecule. Fluorine binds with magnesium, making a compound called magnesium fluoride. It's a brittle substance that finds its way to bones and cartilage and tendon.
Mm.
So you've got the perfect setup for this tendon rupture. And the side effects of these drugs, they will say most of these drugs, the commonly used drugs, have side effects of the heart, palpitations, or angina even, and muscle symptoms and nerve symptoms, the three biggies with magnesium deficiency. Chronic fatigue syndrome, we're having such great results with people with chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. I wish Lady Gaga knew about it because she could continue her tour. But if we never even look at celebrities, because we know as soon as they start to adopt some natural method, they'll be shot down. So don't bother getting in touch with her. But chronic fatigue syndrome is a mineral deficiency, mostly magnesium, and overgrowth of yeast. So I find with chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia, treating yeast and doing magnesium and my remite. What I didn't say about the multiple minerals yet is the minerals I've chosen. 9 of the 12 in remite support thyroid hormone production. Because the huge thing about chronic fatigue and women who have more than one child is that their thyroids suffer. And there used to be this huge fight in alternative medicine against allopathic medicine to try to get women, mostly women, on Armour thyroid. We're just protesting, we're marching for natural thyroid hormone replacement. Well, come to find out, stop waiting till your thyroid's dead to replace it. Give yourself the minerals it needs to make its own hormones. Bladder symptoms, bladder spasms can be treated as bladder infections, and all those antibiotics can lead to yeast overgrowth. Even depression, because serotonin, the mood elevator, requires magnesium for its production. If you want to detoxify, you have to use magnesium. Diabetes, oh, listen to this, Ashley, you'll love this. In our doctor books, it's a known sign of diabetes if you have low magnesium. And I'm sure no doctor has ever told a patient that.
Just incredible.
Yeah. 7 of the 10 enzymes needed to metabolize glucose in glycolysis are magnesium dependent. Fatigue, if as I said before, if you don't have magnesium, 6 of your 8 steps of the Krebs cycle that make your ATP energy molecule won't work. Headaches, even migraines are treated with well-absorbed magnesium. And then there's heart disease, hypertension. The scenario with hypertension is you're massively stressed, your body is tight, you're tight around your blood vessels. Maybe there is some calcification of your blood vessels as well. So they're tightening up and you have high blood pressure. You go to your doctor, you're under stress because of white coat syndrome anyway. You may be under stress because of a dozen things. Your doctor doesn't ask you. Your blood pressure is elevated, and they finally say, look, you've had slightly elevated blood pressure all these, past few times. We're going to put you on a diuretic. So you go home on a diuretic and you bleed out sodium, potassium, and magnesium. You come back in a month, oh, your blood pressure's worse. We caught it just in time. Here's 2 more blood pressure drugs. 3 months later, you come in for your blood test to make sure they're not killing your liver. And oh my gosh, all of a sudden your cholesterol is elevated. Oh, your blood sugar's elevated. So what did I tell you about blood sugar and cholesterol? They're magnesium dependent. So now you're on 6 drugs for magnesium deficiency.
Because the first drug, because you were already deficient to begin with, and then the first drug they put you on caused you to become more deficient. So a
Mhm.
bunch of other health problems pop up, and they get to put you on more drugs.
Yeah.
And the doctors don't know.
No, and they won't know, and they're not being told, and they won't educate themselves, and they're admonished if they do alternatives, and on and on and on in a vicious cycle of criminal behavior as far as I can see, because if just taking an Epsom salt bath will allow you to sleep well and bring your blood pressure down, and what's a good magnesium oral supplement going to do? But we never learned about any of this in medical school. I had to read it on my own, and then I learned about it in naturopathic training. And even then, it wasn't until I did the research of the magnesium book I realized, oh my gosh, I need way more magnesium than I ever thought. And then I had to invent a magnesium that everybody could take without suffering the laxative effect.
No, fascinating. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the Epsom salt bath. I take several of them a week with my son,
Mm.
and he's going to be 3 now. And it's just like for me, I just cross my fingers and pray as he's in the bath. I'm like, absorb it, absorb, 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 because I want him to sleep. And but how much do we actually absorb from a well saturated Epsom salt bath? So I've got a pretty big bath, so I use half. I get the bags from. Oh, and where should we? Can we get it from Costco? You know, they have
Mm.
the bulk Epsom salt from Costco. I put like half a bag in,
Hmm.
which has got to be like 4 cups of Epsom salt in my bath. Is that enough? Is that too much? Is that quality of Epsom salt okay? You know, how hot should it be? How long should we sit in it? And how much do we actually absorb from Epsom salt?
I don't know that we know the absorption facts. I know that I have a story of a former client, well, patient back in the day, who put a whole bag in, which is like 2 kilos, and kind of fell asleep in the bath, and then she woke up having to go to the bathroom because she it gave her the laxative effect. So much was absorbed into her blood, and then got into her intestines and triggered bowel movement. So we know it's absorbed. The only time I've come across the quality aspect of Epsom salts is when I worked with a group of mothers who had autistic children,
Mm.
and they were concerned, well, does it have this, does it have that? And they found that some of the Epsom salts they sent off to the lab were contaminated.
Oh.
But part of me says, well, magnesium is such a good detoxifier, and it
Mm.
removes heavy metals. Let's just say it's going to remove those. But what I do as well is I'll get some of my liquid bentonite clay, and I'll put a few tablespoons in a bath. And I know from doing chloride strip testing in a bath with bentonite clay, it removes the chlorine.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that gives me good information. Then you look at the skin. Well, the skin is going to allow in as much magnesium, maybe as it wants. I don't know. I know the laxative effect from being in the bath for hours, maybe just a unique example. And I just tell people maybe 30 minutes in a bath, and don't make it scalding hot, especially with a child, of course. You're going to make it moderately warm to hot. So it's 30 minutes. It's for the amount. I say 2 cups for an adult. If you've got a big bath, yes, you will need the 4 cups. And most parents have told me, well, when they do the Epsom salts baths with their kids, they do sleep better. So I don't know if that's your experience or not.
My experience is my child has an infinite amount of energy because we don't feed him any junk food. He actually will drink. I do juicing. He'll drink the juices and the smoothies. He's full of nutrients and supplements and healthy
Hmm.
food, and so he could go for days on end. Um, and that's how we would all be if we ate like my
Uh-huh.
son, which is incredibly healthy.
Uh-huh.
So it's just, I mean, just imagine if we were brought up in a household that was 100% organic and we weren't allowed to eat any processed food,
Mhm.
just how we'd have no disease. I mean, it would be disease would be totally eradicated. And it's exciting. It's exciting that we now have that choice as we're learning more and more. What about
Mhm.
those magnesium oil sprays? I bought one and it
Mm.
did nothing. I covered my entire body in that thing, and of course, it says nothing on the bottle as to how much, like,
Right.
magnesium's in each spray, but I heard I had a few guests on the show that claimed it really did help and people noticed deeper sleep, and I felt that my, taking a bath was more effective or drinking
Mm.
my liquid supplement was more effective, but, what are your thoughts on these magnesium oil sprays, that you'd spray on your body
Right.
before sleep?
Yeah, I had to resort to them when I was getting the laxative effect from the oral. And for me, after a short time, they burned my skin. I
Ugh.
couldn't put enough on to get absorbed, to get
Mhm.
relief. So I found them too, I guess, was concentrated. But then if I tried to dilute it down with water, I wasn't getting any effect. But of course, some people can be helped. Some people just need a little bit of something. Some people just need a nudge. What we did finally with our Remag product, and we're in the process of um, making a Remag lotion. Well, we have a Remag lotion, but we're fine tuning it. And some people just swear by it. And it is, see, magnesium is a big hydrator, actually.
Mm.
So it can be used as a body cream, but the
Ooh.
magnesium oil, it itched and irritated. I had
Yeah.
to put it on and then a half an hour later take another shower. So it wasn't convenient, but a hydrating body cream with a lot of magnesium in it, people just swear by it.
And
So
what is it about
it,
magnesium that allows us to absorb it so readily through the skin?
it's hydrophilic. It attracts water to it, so it will just jump through the skin to reach the water underneath the skin, and on the skin it'll attract water from the atmosphere to it. It's just a total hydrator.
So
You cannot, just let me explain a little further. You can't put magnesium very easily into a capsule without it, what do you call, breaking down the capsule with the water it attracts. It melts the capsule.
Interesting. Very interesting. I was just imagining that if it's hydrophilic and it's in a lotion, it would plump up the skin and sort of make the wrinkles go away. Is that the effect that this lotion has?
People are saying that, and
Ah, ha, ha, ha.
we can't make claims, but yeah, our people will say that. Yeah, it's an incredible product, and compared to the $1,000 creams and lotions out there for cosmetic purposes, yeah, this actually does something.
And it goes into the body and helps every organ in the body and all the tissues and
Yeah.
all the cells. Tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about how magnesium detoxifies heavy metals from the body and the brain.
Well, it works with the glutathione, it works with the methylating pathways in the liver, P450 pathways, the sulfation pathways, because, as I said, it's working with 700, 800 different enzyme processes. Some of them are going to be the detoxification pathways. It can directly bind heavy metals, apparently. It just, let me look at my words on detoxification. We didn't get through the list. I only got to 20 of my 65 diseases. I say magnesium is crucial for the removal of toxic substances and heavy metals such as mercury, aluminum, and lead from the cells. It's a cofactor in both the production of glutathione and the function of the P450 detoxification systems in the liver.
Mm, amazing.
Uh,
Do you want to
mm,
continue with your list?
Okay, I was at Hypoglycemia, because it balances the release of insulin. Indigestion, the gastric proton pump that acidifies the contents of the stomach for proper digestion is dependent on magnesium. And this is what the proton pump inhibitors kill.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a black box warning on them that they cause magnesium deficiency.
Oh, in an already deficient population.
Right. 80% of the population is deficient. So, just sidebar onto blood testing. When they do serum magnesium test in the hospital, they'll say, oh, it looks normal. You're in the range. But what happens with serum magnesium, because the magnesium in the blood has to protect the heart from having a heart attack, anytime your serum magnesium goes down a notch, the body's biofeedback mechanism pulls magnesium out of the muscles and the bones.
Mm-hmm.
So when you start having some muscle cramping anywhere in the body, you know that your magnesium is being pulled out of those muscles in order to protect the heart. So because doctors always have seen that magnesium, oh, it always looks normal except when someone's dying,
Mm-hmm.
they leave it alone. They don't put it in an electrolyte blood panel. So they do not even engage magnesium. And that's where it's gotten the short end of the stick, because no one looks at magnesium in your blood. I've told people they should ask for magnesium RBC, red blood cell test. It's more helpful, but it's still not the best test for magnesium. That one is still a research test. It's called the ionized magnesium test. But what drives me crazy is they have ionized calcium testing,
Huh.
but they don't have ionized magnesium testing.
But it would be cheaper just to start taking a good magnesium supplement than
Yeah,
getting all the testing.
I agree, and I've kind of made that point throughout that magnesium is so safe, and you don't have to worry about it. Some people will get the RBC test to follow their values, but then they'll freak out because sometimes in the first 3-4 months, if they get another blood test, it'll be lower, and they'll say, well, Remag isn't working. You deceived me, you horrible person. No, not really. No one's ever said that. But they will say, how come it's lower? And I say, okay, you've been deficient in magnesium, what, 30 years? You give yourself a month or so of magnesium, all your 700, 800 enzyme systems are going to start wanting that magnesium and completely sucking it up and putting it to work.
Mm.
And so it's not going to show up in your blood. It's going to be in your cells, but in another few months, you'll see it'll start to become elevated. But magnesium RBC test isn't the best. There's not a lot of magnesium in your red blood cells, and this is kind of too much information, but I know you like information. The red blood cells don't have mitochondria. And it's the mitochondria where the Krebs cycle works and a lot of these enzyme processes work, where there's a lot of magnesium to do that work. No mitochondria, a lot less magnesium, but we use that as a test because we don't have an ionized magnesium test. So I say to people, look, make a list of your magnesium deficiency symptoms before you start magnesium, and
Mm-hmm.
we've done 24 of them. There, if you're inflamed, you're deficient. If you have insomnia, if you have irritable bowel or kidney disease or kidney stones or migraines, any sort of musculoskeletal condition, any sort of nerve problem, any sort of OB/GYN problem, pretty much, premenstrual tension, dysmenorrhea, infertility, premature contractions, preeclampsia, eclampsia, even cerebral palsy and sudden infant death syndrome
Mm.
are magnesium deficiency.
That was going to be one of my questions. You had mentioned that between 7 and 800 enzymatic processes are dependent
Mm,
upon magnesium, and then the next highest one is zinc at 180.
mm,
And I have learned that zinc deficiency in the mother is the cause of Down syndrome.
mm.
What birth defects are caused by, if any, a magnesium deficiency?
Fortunately, I don't think there's a birth defect, except there are studies about cerebral palsy. I wouldn't like. Yes, you can look up cerebral palsy as because that's nerves and muscles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the muscular dystrophies, I have people with their children doing lots of remag, and they say it does help their muscles. So there hasn't been enough research on this. I know they're just beginning to do the research on sudden infant death syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it's horrible to think that a woman can be developing high blood pressure during pregnancy, high blood pressure, edema, even to the point of seizuring. They will put up an IV magnesium drip on her and save her life and save the baby's life. But they won't tell that same woman the next time you get pregnant, make sure you take a lot of magnesium throughout your whole pregnancy to prevent this,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Right.
I took my mineral supplement. I'm sure it's not as, I mean, it's hey, I take it and I feel a difference. So I'm happy. It's a magnesium citrate. It works
Yeah,
for me. I'm absorbing it, thank God. And
yeah.
I take it to just, I don't get the, needing to run to the
Laxative
bathroom, right?
effect.
Laxative
Right,
effect,
right.
thank you. And I take this and I feel the nights I don't take it, I notice a difference. The nights I do take it, I definitely know. So I know my body needs it. My body sucks it all in and loves it. And
Mm,
I had none of those symptoms during my pregnancy.
yeah,
I kept my
yeah,
rings on my fingers. I never
yeah,
had edema. I never had cramps. I
yeah.
never had constipation. I never had aches and pains, beside the regular fact that your ligaments are becoming looser because of the hormones.
Mm,
But
mm,
I got massages and saw my chiropractor and got extra padding on my bed because I had to lie
mm.
sideways. And that was it. That was all that I just used.
Oh, wow.
I had none
Yeah.
of those symptoms, and I did two birthing classes. I did one with Penny Simpkin, who's the creator of the Doulas International,
Julia.
and
Ah,
my second one was with Tracy Adams, who's a hypnobirthing specialist, and so with all the women in both birthing classes, every one of them, oh my God, can't sleep at night. I'm constipated. My back hurts.
mhm,
I have
mhm.
headaches. My muscles are cramping. And the whole time
Yeah,
I was just singing like, hey, minerals, minerals. Why aren't you taking minerals? Like
yeah.
I was telling them magnesium, you guys. And
Mhm.
so they're deficient in magnesium, and the baby, as much as we love it, is the parasite that's sucking the minerals out of us, like
Yeah,
to build its own bone structure.
right,
And so you're becoming rapidly deficient in minerals over a 9,
right,
10 month period,
right,
because you're building someone else's bone structure for them. So of course it should be
mm,
standard practice that we
right.
take mineral supplements. Just as
And let me just
sure.
interject. You mentioned zinc, Ashley. Very important. The postpartum depression is a combination of zinc deficiency and magnesium deficiency, and the thyroid has gotten low. And there are homeopathic remedies that you can take for postpartum depression.
Mm,
It's called Ignatia, Ignatia, and there are things to do. And let me just also interject, when you say you can skip a dose or two of your minerals and not sleep well, that means you're not
oh,
saturated.
absolutely.
It means you're doing good, but I mean, this is what I aim for, is to get
Mm-hmm.
people really saturated, so you're not, I mean, you're dependent on magnesium in a way, but just like you're dependent on food. If
Mm-hmm.
we had the magnesium in the food, we wouldn't have to take supplements. So I
Right.
say, when people say to me, well, when I get saturated, can I stop? It's like, no, would you stop eating?
Or breathing.
So, yeah, or breathing. Oh my gosh, yes.
Why is it that it's not in our food? We're going to get back to your list because I think it's so important.
Mm.
I mean, I could have you here for days, of course, but just let people, because there's some people that still believe that supplements are unnecessary, and
Mhm.
I really have come to the conclusion that if you want all the nutrients your body requires to function optimally, we need to supplement along with a very healthy diet, because it's not in our food. But just could you explain to us, why isn't it that all the minerals we need, why aren't they in our food?
Well, in big agri, they've been farmed out
Mm-hmm.
and they aren't put back in. They're expensive. Rock dust, for example, is the best one. And so what's put in the soil is just the potash, real cheap things. Now, what's funny is I live in the on an island, Maui, that has 18 golf courses,
Oh.
and I'm surrounded by golf courses. Now they try to do the best they can. They're not drugging the land. And I check that because when I see them spraying, I go over and look at the containers because I walk the golf course early morning. And what's in the containers? Minerals. What's the biggest barrel? Magnesium. So we are giving our golf courses more magnesium than we're giving ourselves. So it has to be put into the soil. Um, I went through this with a lot of the raw fooders or the people that drink their 40 ounces of green drink a day. I'll get some of these people with heart palpitations and leg cramps, and they
Mm.
say, it's not possible for me to have magnesium deficiency, but it sure sounds like it. Put them on my Remag and Remite. Within a day, their symptoms are gone because they're so darn healthy, but they're deficient because even their organic food does not have enough minerals.
Mm-hmm.
You have to replace them. Even if it's organic, it doesn't mean your farmer is replacing. Now, one of my big charitable efforts is with a local biodynamic organic farmer,
Ooh.
and he's doing great things. And I eat tons of it. You wouldn't believe the amount of salad greens I eat in my keto diet and stay in ketosis. But I can go maybe a day or two without my magnesium, but no more. So my incredibly awesome diet is not giving me enough magnesium. And I think part of that too is I mean, maybe we're under more stress than we were. I don't know. There's the pollution. There's just the crazy stress of our media environment. My husband says we have 5 bodies now. We have a TV body and we have a chip body because we're always on our phone or computer, and we're neglecting our chemical body, and we have a mystery body, and we have all these bodies that we're trying to adapt to, and it's a huge stress. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, I think it's not in our diet. The food we eat as a general population is very processed. People are eating out all the time, so we just have so many ways we deplete our magnesium. I mentioned athletes. We sweat it out. All these crazy CrossFit people or even hot yoga people. I'm doing an interview tomorrow with a yoga instructor, and I'm going to go crazy on hot yoga. It's just, and oh, well, I'm going to do saunas. I'll do a sauna every day. That's healthy. And they don't know that they're sweating out their minerals. Or I'll go get chelation therapy, and they'll pull out all their minerals. Oh, my doctor gives me one IV after a chelation. When I did chelation on my own self, sticking the needle in my own arm, I was quite proud of myself. After like 3 chelations, my knees were aching. I was pulling out
Mm.
calcium, for Pete's sakes.
Mm.
So there's a million ways to lose magnesium and only one way to get it back.
And you bring up a interesting point of people who sweat, so sports
Mm,
athletes, hot yoga, going into a sauna especially for detoxification. I had Dr. Klinghardt on the show recently who said that
mm,
only sweat for 5 minutes. If you're going to go in a sauna, 95% of the heavy metals that you would have sweat out would happen within the first 5 minutes of sweating, and then go take a shower and wash it off, and close your pores and cool off with a cool shower. Don't do these
Wow.
long 4 hour, 6 hour
Right.
sweats because
Oh my
it's not
gosh,
it's
that's awesome.
you're just sweating out your minerals. And so all these
Wow.
people are sweating out the minerals, but he says that
Yeah.
95% of the heavy metals are going to happen
Yeah.
in the first 5 minutes of sweating, which
Yeah.
is really cool. Uh, and you're
Wow.
saying that magnesium helps the body to remove heavy metals. What do you think is more effective, saunas or taking magnesium in terms of removing heavy metals? Or do you think it could be done together to be even more effective at removing heavy metals?
Well, now that I've heard what Dr. Klinghardt says, I would say the 5 minutes sweating and the daily magnesium. I mean, why not do both? I've avoided saunas when I went through menopause. It was just too much.
Mm,
But if I go in and turn up the steam or whatever, the hot sauna, and do 5 minutes sweating, that sounds very doable. I
mm-hmm.
have had people come to me though, like you say, after doing candida cleanses where they want you to do saunas, and they've just been beside themselves with the spasms and all the magnesium deficiency symptoms, and it's hard to well, I was going to say it's hard to come back from that, but it's very distressing when someone already has chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia and yeast overgrowth, and they're just exhausted, and
Mm-hmm.
they do these heavy detoxes. I've written blogs called Toxic to Detox, and I mean it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You have to go slowly, and I've got a free yeast book, Reset the Yeast Connection. And I say, you may be too toxic to detox. So start with some psyllium seed powder and water. Start with a bit of bentonite clay before you even do a diet. Because as soon as you do a diet, you're starving the yeast. They die
Mm-hmm.
off. And
Mm-hmm.
most people don't realize there are 178 different yeast toxins that are released when yeast die.
Mm. Wow. And so if they're already toxic and their pathways aren't prepared,
Mm,
their emunctory pathways aren't ready to help,
mm,
release break down and release the toxins, they go on a anti-candida diet. They start getting the die off of the 178
mhm.
toxins come out of these dead yeast into their body, and now they're just way overloaded,
Yeah.
and they
And
feel
and
like
that's
worse.
and they stop, right, Ashley? They
Mm.
quit. It's like, I feel worse. Why should I do something that makes me feel worse? And yes, preparing people with the bentonite and psyllium, and I will get them on Remag before I go too far, just like you say, to open up their pathways.
Wow. Now you've mentioned liquid bentonite clay a few times. Is that just
Mhm.
mixing bentonite clay with liquid, or do you buy it in a liquid?
You can buy it. It's probably a lot more expensive. Great Plains has one. I tell people to buy the first one as a liquid and then get yourself some food grade bentonite clay powder,
Mm-hmm.
and then in a blender mix up the consistency that the Great Plains had.
Mm-hmm.
And it's different for different people what they can tolerate, but it's a lot less expensive to get food grade bentonite powder
Mm-hmm.
and just blend it.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yep.
I bought a 10-pound bag on Amazon.
Oh,
I'm kind of been sitting here going, I know I should take this. I'm not really sure how because I just bought it
ah,
recently. So now I know. Mix it with psyllium and some water in my blender.
yep.
Very
Oh no,
cool.
don't do it that way, hon.
Oh.
Um, Mix the bentonite in water and then create a bottle of bentonite. When you mix psyllium in water, it immediately turns into a gel.
Mm-hmm.
So what you want to do, and I do it like scientifically, I put the tablespoon of bentonite liquid in the bottom of my shaker cup, and then I put anywhere from a teaspoon to a tablespoon of psyllium, depending on the grade of it. It's real fine powder, you only need a teaspoon. If it's grainy, like a fibrous, you'd need a tablespoon. Shake it up like 10 times real quick, and then drink it so quick that it doesn't turn into a gel. And you're probably just going to use like 4 ounces of water to do that. And then you'll follow that with another 6 or so ounces of plain water or sea salted water.
Oh, fascinating. We have so much more we could discuss, and I know we've probably already gone over your time. Do you have a
Mm,
few more minutes to complete your list, or should
yes.
we? Okay,
Oh,
okay,
no, no. Because a lot of them had like H, they had like 8 different types of problems within musculoskeletal or nerves. But then
got it.
osteoporosis, we talked about Parkinson's disease, Raynaud's syndrome, where you have spastic blood vessels in your fingers. Spastic blood vessels, okay, that's magnesium. Sports injuries, sports recovery, temporomandibular joint syndrome, tongue biting, that's a muscle spasm, and tooth decay. So we're done.
Oh, so when people grind their teeth at night, and then they have a TMJ dysfunction, that
Mhm.
that is related to magnesium.
Absolutely.
Very interesting. Wow. Wow. Well, you've got all of us wanting to take magnesium at this point. I
Oh,
would be surprised if any listener wasn't immediately wanting to try magnesium on some capacity.
mhm.
I know it's
Ashley, people just have to, like you said, do an Epsom salt bath. Just see what it feels like and prove it to yourself. You
mhm.
read some of my books and information, listen to what I talk about. And yes, I have talked about Remag, but you can take any magnesium and see to what level it helps you and just work with it. So it is it's any type of magnesium can help you. Like I said, the mag oxide can help. And when you consider that 60% of the population is constipated, you may want the laxative effect.
Mhm. Mhm. And dehydrated. They're dehydrated, and that's why they're
Yeah,
constipated. And they got to drink their half their body weight in ounces every day with
exactly.
some natural salt and magnesium.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about your websites. Make sure that listeners know you have your own radio show, and they can go to drcarolyndean.com. So that's drcarolyndean.com. And of course, the links to everything that Dr. Carolyn does is going to be the show notes of today's podcast. So learntruehealth.com. You have a radio show, so if they love today's interview, they're just going to love listening to what you do as well. What are the things, and of course you've got all these wonderful books, you've got
Mhm.
great Kindle books, you've got physical books you've written, you've got lots of free books that you've written, and literature. What should they be aware of besides your radio show? What else should they be aware of? You've got a button that says start here on your website.
Right, that's a product website, rnareset.com. The FDA made us go through some hoops about our websites because I'm not allowed to talk about my products. So when you go to drcarolyndean.com, um, it'll click on my at the top. There's a start here, as you say about my blog. But if you want to look at my products, it's down on the right side where it says learn more, RNA reset support your cellular health. And then learning more puts you through an intermediary website, which the FDA says it's distances. They hope people will drop off and not go to my RNA reset site to heal themselves.
Mhm.
But so you can get to my radio show, which is Achieve Radio through the drcarolyn.com. You can get to my product site, but the site that has a lot of my educational information is actually drcarolyndeanlive.com. And I'll have to check with my lawyer and see if we can put that up on my website. It's people have no idea. Um, the amount of information that is being kept from them
Mhm.
because we have chosen to support allopathic medicine
Mhm.
as opposed to natural medicine. And I've always said, and I very easily practice as a medical doctor and a naturopath, we can do both and have both, and there's no reason why we shouldn't.
I used to do marketing for a naturopath, and I know the complexities
Mhm.
of having to navigate what the FDA says. Basically, oncologists can say, "I can sell you this chemotherapy, and they do. Every chemotherapy treatment you get, every dose you get, oncologist makes thousands of dollars. If
Mm-hmm.
someone thinks that oncologist doesn't have an agenda when they're prescribing it, you got to think again. I met a woman back when I lived in an apartment complex a few years ago. I met a neighbor who was in her early 20s with lupus, and she was going through chemotherapy treatments for her lupus. And
Oh my
I
gosh.
cried
Oh,
for her. I cried for her because,
oh,
lupus is an autoimmune condition. As not why on earth would they put her on chemotherapy? It is they need to support her in stabilizing her body and
mm-hmm,
nutrifying it and bringing down the inflammation. And you can
mm-hmm,
you can you can I have seen naturopaths reverse. I've been trained to not use
mm-hmm,
the word cure, but reverse autoimmune condition, right? And we
mm-hmm.
have this
Oh
woman
yeah.
who's, the doctors get so much kickback that they're looking to give chemo to anything that they can justify. And
Mm-hmm.
an oncologist can say, I can cure you with chemotherapy, although they tend not to, because they don't want to give you any
Hope.
hope at all. But
Mm-hmm.
a naturopath's not allowed to say that, I can sell you this vitamin C and it's going to cure your scurvy. It's illegal. It's illegal for you to say, I'm going to sell you vitamin C and this vitamin C is going to cure your scurvy. And
Even
isn't
though it will, because
yeah,
scurvy is a vitamin C deficiency condition.
exactly. And
Uh,
this is how messed up. And so the information we're receiving, luckily there's doctors like you who are willing to, I mean, you've got your different, you're trying to keep everything separate, just like the FDA says, but at least you're willing to go up against it
mm,
and share this information. And we really need a lot more doctors like you to continue doing this so that we can get the information out there. And as a population, we can overcome this very archaic medical system that is not serving our best interests.
mhm. Right. Well said.
Well, it has been such a pleasure having you on the show. We could discuss this for hours. I'm sure my listeners have loved
Mhm.
have loved you. Again, the links to everything that Dr. Carolyn does is going to be in the show notes of the podcast. So those who want to follow her radio show, which is highly informative, they can go to drcarolyndeanlive.com. And of course, that's going to be in the show notes. Is there anything else left unsaid for this interview? Is there anything else you want to share with the listeners to wrap up this very informative 2 hours?
Well, basically that you should be in charge of your own body. Don't presume that when something goes wrong, someone else can fix it. There is enough information out there for you to have tools at your hand rather than rushing to the doctor. So I just tell people, well, I tell them to come to my information because I have all the answers. I've been doing this for 50 years, but that may be a little self-serving. But get your information lined up so that, heaven forbid, you have something go wrong or an illness, you don't just rush to the doctor, because at a time of vulnerability, the doctor will basically be in charge of your body, and you can end up on medication or having procedures that you're doing out of fear rather than out of knowledge. So
Mm.
I really want people to take charge of responsibility, and in my world, I'm saying mineral deficiencies, yeast overgrowth. If you've got a weight problem, look at a ketogenic, yeast-free diet. And with those basic things, you can tackle just about anything.
Enjoy what you heard today on your episode of the Learn to Health podcast? Did something move you, inspire you? Did you get great information that's going to change your life? Awesome. That's exactly what I'm here to do, is to help you gain your health back. Please turn around and share this. If this is something that's helped you in any way, share this with those you love. Love the Learn True Health podcast and want to support us? Awesome. You can go to takeyoursupplements.com and you can support us that way. You'll get access to amazing supplements that are just really great quality for a great price. And there'll be someone on the other end of the line to help you pick out your supplements that are right for you. That's takeyoursupplements.com. Or join our membership. LearnTrueHealth.com/join. That's another great way to support our podcast, support our movement, and you'll be supporting yourself. Gain more information, wonderful videos, wonderful trainings, and you'll also be able to share those with those you love as well. So go to LearnTrueHealth.com/join. Want something fun for free? Go to LearnTrueHealth.com, and right there on the front page, you'll see where you can get our free cookbook. I spent a lot of time making it, and it was so much fun. It's really delicious, healthy recipes. And you can also get our 7-day doctor course. Right there, it's 7 days of naturopathic videos sent right to your inbox, and you can learn from top naturopaths on how to gain health naturally. So that's takeyoursupplements.com for wonderful supplements. LearnTrueHealth.com/join to join our awesome membership, which is only open for a limited time. You can get our free healthy cookbook, and you can also get for free 7 days of wonderful naturopathic videos sent to you. Just go to LearnTrueHealth.com and you'll see it right there on the front page. Thank you so much for being a listener, and thank you for sharing and helping others. Let's spread this information and turn this ripple into a tidal wave.